Hello everybody, and today I have something a bit unique for you all. I have a Skyrim theory, well, rather comparison I happened to make. Now I'm sure some of you out there have heard of the theory that Ulfric Stormcloak is comparable to the Gothic king Ulfric that sacked Rome. But I believe I found a historic leader far more comparable to good old Ulfric himself than Ulfric. I'm sure by the title you already know that I mean Brian Boru. Before I go on, I must say that the comparison between Ulfric and Ulric only makes sense if you look at their enemies, the Imperials and the Roman Empire. On the other hand, Ulfric is far more like Brian on a life story sort of level. Brian Boru started his life as the son of a minor chieftain in a time where much of Ireland was under the threat of Viking raids. His father Kennetig sent him to a monastery where he would learn how to write and speak Latin. He soon faced tragedy though, as his brother came and told him that his father had died in battle with the Vikings, so he returned to his father's fort to learn how to fight. He fought bravely, and it seemed as though he was destined to become a great warrior, but nothing more than that. He soon raised an army, though. This army would try to avenge his father and take back their homeland from the Viking raiders. They fended off their lands from Vikings for many years, but many of the soldiers died, and soon it seemed like there was no more than a few left. Most of these remaining soldiers were cairns, or farmers turned warriors using their throwing darts and iron axes, which were quite lethal considering they've used them all their lives for chopping down trees and throwing at deer. When his army was down to only 15 soldiers, and all seemed lost, his brother decided to join him, and his brother's followers, hundreds-fold, came and replenished his army. Brian's rebellion had been revived. Unfortunately, rivaling chiefs murdered his brother. He avenged his brother, but he claimed the seat as king of Munster. He decided to expand his kingdom so he could better fight the Vikings. He conquered Leinster, Meath, Connaught, and Ulster. But he still had many enemies in these areas. Many that would soon be a threat. As he grew old, into his 80s, his enemies, his old enemies, the Vikings and rebels within his own kingdom, started stockpiling weapons, getting ready for war. But Brian was no fool, he had done the same. In fact, he hired Viking mercenaries as well, except for his own side this time. Sihtric Silkbeard called upon one of his cousins, Sigurd the Stout. They believed that together they could defeat the old man in his mighty kingdom. In fact, the ports of Dublin were swarming with Vikings. This was his last stand. The battle was about to begin on a beach just north of Dublin. Brian's son was entrusted to be the leader of his men, and Sihtric Silkbeard, as well as Sigurd the Stout, fought. Both fought vigorously, but Brian's son and Sigurd the Stout both fell in that battle. the last of the Vikings were defeated by the Irishmen, although some escaped. That night, while he was praying, Brian was murdered by some of the Vikings that escaped. And that was the end of his story. Now I notice some similarities between this story and Ulfric's. Both are the sons of chiefs that died while their sons were away. Both went to religious places in their youth, where they learned abilities involving words as well as learning about the ancient ways of their people. Soon after, they both break these places' teachings of peace to fight for their people, only to lose time and time over, until they gain allegiance with someone that helps them. If you help the Stormcloaks go to victory, then Ulfric, just like Brian, slowly becomes High King. In the end, their own kin betrays them for a foreign power, and they must fight back. Both fight for religious freedom as well. In Skyrim, it's the worship of Talos, and in the real life, the worship of Christ. For if the Vikings took over, surely they would not want the Irish to worship Christ, but rather their own gods like Thor. Similarly, Talos and Jesus, in a way, are like a man who became a god. In a way, they are similar, you must admit. Both reunify their people and their land, as Ireland was split apart between many chiefs that fought between themselves before they unified under High King Brian to fight the Vikings. And surely Skyrim will have to reunify under the reign of Ulfric Stormcloak in order to fight the Altmerry Dominion, their true enemy. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will link the music and the video clip sources in the description.